Greetings, friends. Welcome to this live stream for Empty Cloud Monastery. The topic of today's talk is the Great 40. This is referring to one of the suttas in Majjhima Nikaya, 117. But before we launch into contemplating this sutta together, I'd like to pay homage to our teacher, the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So today I'd like to bring to your attention this beautiful sutta from Majjhima Nikaya called the Great 40. In Pali, it's Maha Chattari Sukha Sutta. And I'll explain what the Great 40 are as we go through the sutta. It sort of reveals itself at the end of the sutta as to what these Great 40 are. But it's a really profound sutta and quite complex sutta in a way. But I enjoy this sutta visually. If we can imagine as we go along what this sutta is describing, it really can come to life. So we're talking about the Eightfold Path, and most particularly focusing on Samma Samādhi, right concentration, right focus, or right immersion, right stillness. So this sutta is all about this aspect of the path, that is right concentration or right focus, and how we develop this aspect of the path and how it is supported and what is necessary for us to be able to begin to focus our minds, to become one-pointed, to achieve or experience stillness. So I'm going to read through the sutta in part or in whole, and we'll just investigate as we go along as to the meaning of this teaching. So this sutta, this teaching was given at Savatthi by the Buddha. The Buddha was staying in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery, the place where he spent really the most time of any other place since the time he became the Buddha. Many, many vasas here. It's a place of pilgrimage to this day. You can go and they have a place that they say is the kuti that the Buddha used the most, and there's a walking path monument for the place where the Buddha is said to have done his walking meditation. Very inspiring place. When you go to the Buddha's kuti, it's covered, almost always covered in flowers and incense. All the faithful devotees, pilgrims who come from all over the world to this site make offerings here. And one can go in and sit and meditate in what's left of this space, this kuti space. It's like a stone wall going around with a foundation open to the air, no roof. And one can sit there and just take in the scene and meditate in this very special place where we can be very sure, even if this wasn't the Buddha's actual kuti, that he certainly was there. He would have walked that earth. He would have spent many years there. So it's really inspiring. I've got goosebumps just talking about it. I've been there and I found it to be very amazing. I actually stayed near Savatthi for some weeks and visited as often as I could this place, Jeta's Grove and Anathapindika's Park. And it was a very special time, a time of great inspiration. So anyway, this is where the sutta takes place, at Savatthi, Jetta's Grove. And there the Buddha addressed the mendicants. Venerable Sir, they replied, and the Buddha said this. He said, I will teach you noble right Samādhi. I'm going to use the word Samādhi, I think, friends, here, because there are so many different translations of this word. You can just see what it means for you. People translate it variously as Samādhi as stillness, as immersion, as concentration, as focus, as one-pointedness. It is that quality of the quietening of the mind, the directing of the mind, and such an important aspect of the path for us, the ability to still the mind, to let go of thinking, to let go of distraction, to let go of the hindrances, and to experience the mind that is very steady, peaceful, calm, equanimous. So this Samādhi aspect of the path. I'll use the word Samādhi from now on. So the Buddha said, I'll teach you noble, right Samādhi, Samma Samādhi, with its vital conditions and its prerequisites. So all that is required for us to develop Samma Samādhi. He said, listen and apply your minds well, I will speak. The Buddha said this. What is noble right Samādhi? With its vital conditions and its prerequisites. They are right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, and right mindfulness. Unification of mind with these 7 factors as prerequisites is what is called noble right Samādhi, with its vital conditions and also with its prerequisites. So here we have very interesting, important teaching from the Buddha that right Samādhi cannot be cultivated, cannot be developed, cannot be experienced without all the other path factors also being developed, cultivated, and experienced. So this is really important because we can't just teach or practice stillness. We can't just meditate and experience peace, just like that, unless we have the other path factors in place. So this highlights really the importance of virtue, of sila, of living a righteous life, and also cultivating the other path factors, developing mindfulness, practicing the 4 satipatthana, making the right effort, to veer, to direct, to incline towards the good and away from that which is unwholesome. And what else? The wisdom factors of the path, right view and right intention. So these all have to be in place or developing to some extent in order for Samma Samādhi to begin to be developed. And the Buddha goes on to say, in this context, right view comes first. So this path factor of Samādhi, of right view, comes first. And this makes sense when we think about it, how it is that we need to cultivate right view in order to know what is right Samādhi, what is right, what is wrong Samādhi, what is the way to develop on the path of practice. We have to have a certain amount of understanding, don't we, friends, in order to begin to cultivate the path factors. So it is with Samma Samādhi. Right view comes first. And the Buddha says, how does right view come first? When you understand wrong view as wrong view and right view as right view, that's your right view. So what's he saying here? He's pointing to the discernment that's required, that is right view, that enables us to chart our course, to figure out what are the path factors, what are the correct ways to practice. So it's that wisdom aspect of the path that can discern what is the right way forward here. How do I cultivate right view? The Buddha goes on, what is wrong view? So here we can discern what is not path, what is not the way forward. He describes here, there is no meaning in giving. This is a view that one can have. There's no meaning in giving or sacrifice or offerings. There's no fruit or result of good and bad deeds. There's no afterlife. There's no such thing as mother and father, or beings that are reborn spontaneously. And there's no ascetic or Brahmin who's rightly comported and rightly practiced, and who describes the afterlife after realizing it with their own insight. So this is aspects of wrong views that we can have. It's not to say that these things don't exist. Mother and father, for instance, obviously exist, but it's the view that we don't need to recognize a debt to our parents or a sense of relationship with them, duties, responsibilities. We don't need to acknowledge those, or we dismiss those. Wrong view is to dismiss those things. Wrong view is to dismiss karma. This is pointing to cause and effect and the understanding that we can have that wholesome deeds have good results, for instance, or unwholesome deeds have bad results, end in suffering. The lack of recognition here is wrong view, or almost in the time of the Buddha, there were many spiritual practitioners who espoused sort of nihilistic views, annihilationist views, refuting all these things, refuting relationships, refuting cause and effect, karma, refuting the possibility of an afterlife. And so the Buddha's here pointing to the fact that this approach is not going to help us spiritually, not going to free our hearts from suffering. And this is the way here he describes wrong view, in just this way. And so he goes on to say, what is then right view? And this is where the sutta gets really interesting, friends, because the Buddha gives two different aspects of right view. He gives the mundane and the supramundane. That is the worldly and the transcendent, one could say, or the right view of somebody who is training, practicing on the path, but who has not yet had any great insight. And then the right view of somebody who has had some insight, who has had some experience of the end goal of the path. That is someone who is a stream enterer or non-returner, once returner, non-returner, or even arahant. So we can really pay attention and hear the difference between these two aspects of right view and consider how we can apply them to our situation, to our practice. So the Buddha says there are two kinds of right view. There is the right view that is accompanied by defilements, that partakes of good deeds, and that ripens in attachments. So this is the right view of somebody on the path who is developing in virtue, developing in insight, but still has some degree of attachment to this mind and body, to this experience, to samsara. And so somebody who is not yet experienced, who has not yet experienced nibbana, who has not yet seen the way forward clearly, in an uncluttered way, someone who's still subject to defilements. And so there is still cause and effect manifesting. The laws of karma apply to such a person. Such a person is developing in a good way. They're looking forward to a wholesome rebirth because there's still attachment to the 5 khandhas, to the body and mind. So this is the right view of someone who still has some defilements, who is working to develop on the path, and who still has attachments. This is their right view. The view is that there is meaning in giving, sacrifice, and offerings. Right view is to recognize there are fruits and results of good and bad deeds. There is karma. There is an afterlife. In this case, there are such things as mother and father, and beings who are reborn spontaneously. That is, beings who are born in higher realms of existence. That is to acknowledge then also that there are many planes of existence. There are ascetics and Brahmins who are rightly comported and rightly practiced, and who describe the afterlife after realizing it with their own insight. So there's a sense of the kind of humility that's needed for us to look to teachers, to be guided, to open to the wisdom of others, to understand more clearly the way things are. Even if we can't know for ourselves, we can open to these teachings, to this description of right view. There are such things as mother and father. We do have responsibilities. We have a debt to our parents that is difficult to repay. We need to pay attention to that debt and to do all that we can to look after them, take care of them, particularly to help them spiritually if there's any possibility of doing so. There is karma. There are fruits and results of good and bad deeds. As we develop in our practice, we can start to really experience this, can't we? Because we can feel when we do something unskillful how painful that is, because we're awake to how we are. Or we can enjoy the good results of giving, of generosity, of kindness. We can feel the brightening of the mind. We can feel the ability to meditate more easily, to develop Samma Samādhi more easily when we are in that groove of the wholesome and maintaining that and working towards that. So the Buddha says, in all these ways, this is the right view that is mundane, of the one who's practicing, doing our best to follow the Eightfold Path. And then he goes on, there is the right view that is supramundane, that is noble, that is transcendent, undefiled. It is a factor of the path. This is a fulfillment of the right view of the Eightfold Path. It is complete. It is practiced fully in such a person. And what is this right view that is noble, that is taintless, transcendent, a factor of the path? And the Buddha says, it is the wisdom, the faculty of wisdom, the power of wisdom, the awakening factor of investigation of Dhamma, Dhammavichaya. It is right view as a factor of the path, in one intent on the noble, intent on the undefiled, who possesses the noble path and develops the noble path. So the supramundane right view is the wisdom that is a indriya, that is a spiritual friend, that is a power, that is a factor of enlightenment, a bojjhanga. This Dhamma Vichaya, investigation of Dhamma, enlightenment factor, that is the fulfillment of the path factor of right view. So there is a fullness of wisdom, an insight that can be developed as we practice, that is really one-pointed, really clear and free from obscuration. Here, the person who experiences this degree of right view is a stream enterer or someone who's more highly attained than that. But we can consider these teachings. We may not be stream enterers, but we can consider that it is wisdom that we are developing. And that wisdom has these aspects to it. It is a spiritual friend. It is a power for us. It is an enlightenment factor that we are developing, this willingness to investigate the Dharma, to be objective about our experience, to be mindful, to develop all the path factors to aid us, in growing in wisdom. And so this path factor can become fulfilled in such a person as one who is undefiled in this way. All the path factors are strong and aligned and balanced and working together. All the attention is directed toward Nibbana. There's been some perception, some experience of Nibbana, and from that time everything is focused in that direction, and all the path factors are in this way like a finely tuned orchestra, all playing harmoniously in unison together. So we can consider this as we go through the sutta and take inspiration and consider what the Buddha says here. He goes on. So we've been talking, just to encapsulate so far, about right concentration, Samma, Samādhi, right Samādhi, and how this is strengthened by the predominance of right view, that right view comes first, and it's through right view that we can really understand how to align ourselves with the path in order to develop Samma Samādhi. The mundane right view of recognition of cause and effect, and the supramundane right view, that is the wisdom, the insight, that is in a way unshakable, in a way fully aligned with path. The Buddha goes on to say, we make an effort to give up wrong view and embrace right view. That is the right effort. And mindfully, one gives up wrong view and takes up right view. That is right mindfulness. These three things, that is right view, right effort, and right mindfulness, these three things keep running and circling around right view, namely right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. So this is very interesting. I like to just picture this. We have Samma Samādhi being talked about here in the center, say, of a circle. And in the circle all around it are the 8 path factors. And at the top, say at the 12, at the midnight, at the noon point, at the high point, is right view. And right view is circled around by right effort and right mindfulness, and right view itself. So these 3 qualities are constantly supporting, nourishing, aligning right view. As we go on with this sutta, we can add to this image of the circle with right Samādhi, Samma Samādhi in the middle. The Buddha goes on. In this context of the development of Samma Samādhi, right view comes first. And how does it come first? When you understand wrong intention as wrong intention, and right intention as right intention. That's your right view. So now the Buddha's bringing in this next path factor of right intention. We can put that on the circle. Right view and right intention. And right view comes first here also. We have to have right view in order to cultivate right intention, to know what is right intention and what is wrong intention. And here the Buddha tells us, what is wrong intention? Intentions of sensuality, of malice or ill will, and of cruelty or harmfulness. These are the aspects of wrong intention. That's karma, sensuality, vyapada, ill will, and vihimsa, harmfulness or cruelty. So these are wrong intention. And what is right intention? Right intention is twofold. Again, we're going to hear about the mundane right intention and supramundane right intention. Mundane right intention is that accompanied by defilement, partaking of good deeds, and ripening in attachment. So this is worldly right intention, essential for us to cultivate, to follow the path of practice. What is this right intention? It is intentions of renunciation, letting go of sense desire, nekama, intentions of goodwill, and intentions of harmlessness. So you could say the opposite of wrong intention. It seems fairly straightforward. It seems that we would understand this very well, but yet we do well to consider this again and again. What is right intention? What is wrong intention? We can fall for sense desire. We can get immersed in sense pleasures, can't we, friends? We can, lose ourselves in entertainments of one kind or another, sense delights. Right intention is something we are cultivating, and it's a process. And oftentimes we can find ourselves getting caught up in wrong intention because we incline towards certain things that may not be so good for us. Also, cruelty and harm and ill will, harmfulness and ill will, these aspects of right intention. Ill will, the holding of negativity in the heart, and cruelty, the actual manifesting of ill will through action, through deeds, through speech. Can we be free from this? Are we free from this? These tendencies, these inclinations? We can ask ourselves, if somebody wrongs us in some way, do we seek revenge, even in thought? Do we harbor negativity for things that have happened or things that are happening? Do we have any inclinations towards blaming, judging, berating, belittling other people? And so we can notice any unwholesome intentionality in our hearts and minds and incline towards the aspects of right intention. Let go of sense desires and put aside ill will, cruelty, and so cultivate the kindness, compassion, and harmlessness. And this is a process for us for as long as we're practicing on the mundane path. That is most of us working to make effort to develop the wholesome and let go of the unwholesome aspects of our intentionality. And now the Buddha goes on to describe what is the noble, the undefiled, the supramundane, the factor of the path that is right intention. And he says, it is the thinking, the placing of the mind, tako. The thought, vitaka. It's the intention, sankappa, the mental application, the mental fixity, the directing of the mind, the verbal process. He says vachi sankara. It is the thinking of the mind. It is all of that directing of our attention and our thoughts and our energy towards the wholesome. And he goes on, this is the mental application, mental fixity, the thoughts, the intention, in one intent on the noble, intent on the undefiled, who possesses the noble path and develops the noble path. Both for the supramundane description of right view and also here right thought, it's very interesting that these descriptions are also found in the Abhidhamma, friends, the higher Dhamma that was later developed after the time of the Buddha. Sariputta is said to have been the main teacher of this approach. The Buddha himself is said to have taught the Abhidhamma to his mother after her passing away. She was in the Tawatimsa realm, and he visited her there for the space of a vasa of 3 months and taught this Abhidhamma to his mother. So the story goes. In the Pali Canon, we have the Abhidhamma teachings, one of the 3 baskets of the Tipitaka. And it is a very systematic, description of Dhamma, of what is. And here in this sutta, these descriptions of the supramundane right view and right intention are exactly the same, pretty much the same as found in the Abhidhamma. So here there's a bit of an overlap. It may be that some of the text was later added to here from the Abhidhamma, or it may be this may have been a very early inclination towards the Abhidhamma teaching in the Buddha's own words. Who knows? We can't be sure. But here it's very interesting that we have this description that's mirrored in the Abhidhamma texts. What it's really saying, the supramundane right intention, is the intentionality fully developed with the focus, clear focus on Nibbana. So there is no defilement, there's no confusion. This is the compass that is set on Nibbana. And so this is the culmination, we could say, of right intention. So we're given this beautiful description to consider. Right intention, we're normally told in the Sutta Pitaka, is renunciation, non-ill will, and non-cruelty. But here we can consider that as right intention develops, it manifests as the mind that is fixed, that is directed, that is constantly focused on the path and its goal of Nibbana. So there's an unwavering quality to this right intention that comes in. This is the right intention of one who cannot digress into cruelty or ill will, and may be working with sense desire, but will not be overwhelmed with sense desire. Rather, will be consistently stepping away from temptation, stepping away from fascination or obsession with sense desire. So this is the way our right intention is going. And we can take heart and be inspired by this. The Buddha goes on to say, one makes an effort to give up wrong intention and to develop right intention. And mindfully, one gives up wrong intention and develops right intention. So these three things keep running and circling around right intention. That is right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. So again, this emphasis on the importance of right view. We have the circle, we have right view at the top, we have right intention, we have right effort, right mindfulness, and right view circling around right view itself and circling around right intention. This image, this concept of how the path factors work together, how important right view is, how important also is to keep cultivating right effort and right mindfulness and let them circle around our right view, our right intention, these wisdom aspects of the path, to fortify them, to clarify them, to strengthen them. The Buddha goes on now to speak about the next three path factors he speaks about here are the Sila factors. So we're talking already about the Samma Samādhi. The Samādhi aspect of Samma Samādhi is in the center of the circle. Right effort and right mindfulness, these other two aspects of development of mind, are coming in relation to every path factor. And so here we have the last three factors, the factors around virtue, right speech, right action, and right livelihood. The Buddha goes on to speak about these in just the same way, friends. He says, so in this context, right view comes first. How does it come first? When you understand wrong speech as wrong speech and right speech as right speech. That is your right view. And what is wrong speech? Speech that is false, divisive, harsh, or idle chatter, nonsense. That is musawada, false speech, pisarawacha, divisive speech, parusawacha, harsh speech, and sampapalapa, idle chatter. That is wrong speech. And what is right speech? And again, the Buddha says right speech is twofold. There is the mundane right speech, accompanied by defilements, partaking of good deeds, ripening in attachments. Still on the wheel of samsara, but one is cultivating wholesome speech, making effort mindfully to cultivate right speech. The Buddha goes on, there is right speech that is noble, undefiled, transcendent, a factor of the path, fully developed or purified to the extent. This is refraining from lying, refraining from divisive speech, harsh speech, or idle chatter. So there is no longer a possibility, a temptation, an inclination to speak in these unwholesome ways. That is the right speech that is noble, undefiled, transcendent, a factor of the path. So we have the circle, we have right view, right intention, right speech. And the Buddha goes on, making the effort to give up wrong speech and embrace right speech. That is right effort. Mindfully giving up wrong speech and taking up right speech. That is right mindfulness. These three are circling and running around right speech. That is right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. Right view comes first. Right view inclines us towards knowing what is right speech and what is wrong speech. Right effort and right mindfulness enable us to develop right speech, circling around right speech. All of these, let's remember, are being described as the supports for Samma Samādhi in the center. The Buddha goes on to say, In this context, right view comes first. This is the refrain. How does right view come first? When you understand wrong action as wrong action and right action as right action. So Samma Kamanta, this path factor of right action, comes next. And this is only possible to cultivate when we have right view. So we know what's right action and what is wrong action. Right action is twofold. There is that which is still accompanied with defilements, partaking of virtue, subject to rebirth, that is. This is refraining from killing living creatures, refraining from stealing, and refraining from sexual misconduct. This is right action. And conversely, wrong action, of course, is killing, stealing, and committing sexual misdeeds, misdemeanors. The right action that is noble, that is taintless, transcendent, a factor of the path, is this. It is the desisting, abstaining, abstinence, and refraining from the three kinds of bad bodily conduct: killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. This desisting and abstaining and refraining from wrong action in one intent on the noble, intent on the undefiled, who possesses the noble path and develops the noble path. This is the supramundane right action. As with right speech, we can gather that one who is a stream enterer, who is to that degree free from defilements or no longer overwhelmed by the taints, by the unskillful inclinations of the mind and heart, such a person is not really able to do any seriously unwholesome deeds. So killing, stealing, sexual misconduct are really not possible for such a person. So this is the way, friends, we're moving as we practice on this path, develop our sila, develop in virtue. We struggle at first. We strive to refrain from unwholesome speech, unwholesome action. We find ourselves falling short at times. We experience remorse. We learn from our mistakes and we hone our intention and we cultivate right view, these wisdom aspects of the path. We develop mindfulness and right effort and let them circle around these aspects of path so that we're strengthening our insight, right view into what is right speech and right action, what is wrong speech and wrong action. And mindfully and with effort, we are moving away from the unwholesome and developing the wholesome. And we get to the point where it's no longer in us to step aside from the wholesome and to put ourselves in the position of acting or speaking in an unwholesome way. And we may not feel we're at this stage, but we are heading in this direction, and we can take inspiration from this description of the Noble One. The Buddha goes on to bring in livelihood. He says, right view comes first. It is right view that enables us to understand what is right livelihood and what is wrong livelihood. He tells us wrong livelihood. In this sutta, he describes wrong livelihood thus. It is deceit, flattery, hinting and belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. So this is quite interesting because in many suttas, the Buddha describes wrong livelihood as dealing in poisons, dealing in weapons, butchery, killing of animals for food. These kinds of livelihood are not in our best interest. But here the Buddha is speaking in a much more subtle way, and really this teaching is directed, one could say, toward monastics, because we too have livelihood. We're not working, we're not on a salary, we're not occupied in some profession, we don't have careers, but we do have livelihood. We have ways of relating to our status as mendicants, as beggars. We have to be skillful beggars. We have to avoid certain things as wrong livelihood, such things as deceit, flattery, hinting, belittling, pursuing gain with gain. That is to relate to those who support us in ways that are unskillful, to deceive, to flatter people in order to get something from them, to belittle people in order to also get more from them, to shame them into giving more, supporting us with more things, pursuing gain with gain. We're given something and we're not contented, we're not grateful and satisfied enough with what we're getting, we want more. So in these ways, for the monastics, there are aspects of livelihood that are unskillful, and so a skillful right livelihood is to be pursued. The Buddha goes on to say, what is right livelihood? It is twofold. There is the mundane right livelihood and the supramundane right livelihood. To practice right livelihood is, here he says, to give up wrong livelihood and earn a living by right livelihood. So that's quite interesting. It's not a clear opposite of wrong livelihood here, but we can understand the meaning. It is to pursue the wholesome in the ways in which we work, earn a living, and for the monastics to be very skillful around our relationship with those who support us and keep us alive, to be grateful, to be frugal, to be satisfied with less, to be very careful not to in any way deceive people, to not flatter people, to not lead people on, to not berate people around their offerings. How awful, how cruel. No, but to receive the alms and to receive the requisites with a heart of loving kindness and gratitude. So this is clear for the monastics, what is and what is not right livelihood. So the Buddha says the livelihood that is noble, undefiled, supramundane is the desisting, abstaining, abstinence and refraining from wrong livelihood, in one intent on the noble, the undefiled, who possesses the noble path and develops the noble path. This is noble right livelihood. So this is the development of livelihood, the culmination, the perfection, the completion of right livelihood, the inability to step away from that which is wholesome in this aspect of our lives. And he goes on to say that right mindfulness and right effort circle and run around right livelihood along with right view. So right livelihood is strengthened and fortified in these ways. So now we have the full image. I'd like to just try and describe for you. Imagine the circle with the Samma Samādhi in the center. We have right view, right livelihood, right speech, right action, and right intention in a circle. And around each of those qualities is circling and running right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. And all of this is what supports and is necessary for us to develop right samadhi. None of the path factors are isolated, lone, satellite qualities. All of the path factors support and nourish each other. This is one way in which the Buddha has described this relationship. All the 8 path factors are here, described in this way, with Samma Samādhi at the center. I find this very amazing to consider, to draw out, to contemplate. It also highlights the importance of right view, first of all, but also the importance or the significance or the culmination of practice in Samma Samādhi, in the ability to free the mind from the hindrances, to experience peace, to experience clarity, to experience a mind that is uncluttered. The Buddha goes on here. He says, in this context, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? Right view produces right intention. Right intention produces right speech, right action, right livelihood. Right effort and right mindfulness produce right samadhi. Right samadhi produces right knowledge. And right knowledge produces right freedom. So we can see this is one way the Buddha describes the Eightfold Path. One factor producing another. Actually, the sense I get from so many suttas, so many teachings, is that all the path factors kind of dependently co-arise, if you like. They all nourish one another. But here the Buddha's pointing to right view, leading to right intention, leading to right speech, action, and livelihood, and right effort and right mindfulness, producing, enabling right samadhi. These are the 8 path factors. The Buddha goes on to describe 2 more path factors. The 2 path factors to be found in an arahant. That is right knowledge and right freedom or right liberation. That it is right samadhi that enables right knowledge and right freedom, right liberation. And of course, all the other path factors are there around right samadhi. So we can see this fullness of path is described for us with all its aspects and particulars, with the wholesome and also the unwholesome. We've been told about the right path factors and also the wrong eightfold path factors. The Buddha goes on to say, in this context, right view comes first. There are many bad and unskillful qualities that arise because of wrong view. They are worn away by cultivating right view. And the same with all the other path factors. There are the wrong aspects. They are worn away, diminished. We're emerging, extricating ourselves from these wrong path factors by developing the right path factors. This is how we let go of the unwholesome, develop the corresponding wholesome quality. And he ends by saying, for one with right knowledge, wrong knowledge is worn away. For one with right freedom, wrong freedom is worn away. So there are 20 on the side of the skillful, and there are 20 on the side of the unskillful. There are the 8 path factors plus knowledge and liberation. That is 10 path factors that are wholesome, and the qualities that they enable that are wholesome. That is 20. There are 10 path factors that are unwholesome, wrong path factors, and 10 types of qualities that result from them. That is the next 20. So these 2 20s, the wholesome and the unwholesome, make up the great 40. It's interesting, friends, to note how often the Buddha uses numbers, uses images. It's almost mathematical, this sutta, but it is worth considering. And it's complex, really. But if we take in this sutta and consider it over and over, then it can really speak to the heart. And yes, it's numbers and groups, but there's this formulation that really clarifies for us what it is we're doing here, what is this path of practice, and how to develop, how to direct our attention. And let's remember how the Buddha repeats so often in this sutta, it is right view that comes first. Let's cultivate right view. Let's cultivate the mundane right view to be able to consider the Four Noble Truths, to be able to recognize karma, the law of cause and effect, our responsibilities here, teachers, the possibility of path, the nature of samsara, and how there is that possibility of stepping away from that. So to develop right view is to open to these teachings, to consider all that the Buddha has taught in this sutta and other suttas, and to keep inclining our hearts away from anything else, Let right view direct us so that we can distinguish between what is wrong path and what is right path, and keep stepping on the right way, and see how these qualities culminate, sort of purify, sort of become more and more complete, so that we are more and more aligned and directed toward Nibbana, unfalteringly, unshakably, with clarity. So I've given a short, really quite short description of this sutta. I hope that you will look at it again. I'll put the reference in the chat. I've spoken at length, but there's a little teeny bit of time for any comments, questions, and reflections, friends. Greetings to you all. Gregory, Manal, Geetha, Madeline, Rebecca, John, Itzel, Maria, Jayantha, Joseph, Brian. Greetings. It's a bit of a complex sutta. I don't feel I could do it justice, and I hope you will read it again at your leisure, friends. Let's see if there's any comments. Beautiful. That's really lovely, John. John says, prayers to Ishvara, who sent the Buddha to this realm to give these wisdom teachings. Om, peace, 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 sadhu. Thank you, John. Christopher says, in order for right view to arise, requires two conditions. This is a lovely teaching. Thank you for bringing this in, Christopher. The two conditions, voice of another and yoniso manasikara, right attention, the wise directing of our attention. Beautiful. In that sense, we're all savakas, we're all listeners. Wisdom arises from listening. Because the first disciples gained enlightenment through listening to the Buddha discourse and not through meditation comments. Yeah, thank you, Christopher. That's a lovely teaching regarding right view that the Buddha gave. And it is very interesting, is it not, that the voice of another is given so much importance. Also, right directing of attention, which is really all of this sort of the Great 40 is directing our attention in the right way. Yes, I think it is interesting to consider that so many of the great arahants from the time of the Buddha became enlightened through listening to the Dhamma, particularly listening to the Buddha sharing on Dhamma. So we can say that listening to the Dhamma, taking in these teachings, reading the suttas is a very important aspect of our practice. Also, meditation. It is often in meditation that we can really see the defilements falling away, that we can really notice cessation, that we can really gain insight. I think what we can really conclude, Christopher, is why don't we put these two together and recognize that practicing mindfulness and listening are the way forward for us to develop right view. So can we listen with a meditative heart? That is, be present, be aware of the body, listen with the whole body and mind, with the attention, Samma Samādhi, directed towards the Dhamma. So we can recognize these two important qualities for right view and cultivate them together. Thank you, Christopher. Also to meditate, sit on the mat and meditate daily. Not to not do that, to do that as well as listening to the good Dhamma. Thank you very much, Christopher. Joseph, hi Joseph, says, could you speak more about how lay people who rejoice in giving and sharing should practice renunciation of sense desire? How does a layperson with right view practice giving beautiful gifts? That is so lovely, Joseph, and so in character. I'm just going to quickly look at your other comment. The Dhamma is well expanded by the Blessed One. I offer these flower images to the Sangha as an offering of gratitude, thanks, supreme reverence, and loving kindness. Sadhu, sadhu, Joseph. Look at that, everyone. How beautiful is that? I'm only taking it away because otherwise you can't see me. But thank you, Joseph. And thank you for your question and comment. You know, to give is so helpful, is so valuable for us. It is such a wonderful way to develop letting go. So the right intention, that is renunciation, for instance, to be able to renounce, to give things up, is so aided and supported and joyfully possible when we're generous. So if we give away, give, let go of in this way, in this generous way, this can be a great support on the path. Dana Sila Bhavana is another teaching that is very important. These three aspects of path. Dana Sila Bhavana, to cultivate the practice, to cultivate in just this way, as in this sutta of the Great 40, to really consider all these aspects of path and bring them all in. Bhavana. Also Sila, the three aspects of path, you know, that are right speech, right action, and right livelihood, how important it is to have this foundation of virtue in our lives. And dana, the first is dana, the beginning of the path here, in this particular framework. Dana, Sila, Bhavana, to give, to be generous. It's so very important for us to help us to let go, to begin to really develop all the path factors and head for Nibbana. Let's be generous. Let's give. And thank you for your demonstration of this very beautiful quality, Joseph. And finally, friends, I'd like to highlight Madeline's comment. Thank you, Madeline. Says, thank you for introducing us to this deep sutta. I intend to study and contemplate its meaning very soon. Thank you, Madeline. I really hope that everyone will feel similarly encouraged and inspired, because this is indeed a very deep sutta. I'd like to recommend to you all, Bhikkhu Bodhi has given talks on this sutta. I think 3 or 4 sessions for this one sutta. This is why I feel I haven't really done anything other than skim the surface of this sutta today. I'm just so happy to have introduced it to you. And I recommend both reading the sutta yourself, contemplating the sutta, but also check in on YouTube, Bhikkhu Bodhi's talks on this sutta. Bhikkhu Bodhi, who of course translated the Majjhima Nikaya for us, who knows the suttas inside and out, and he offers many insights and also speaks about the relationship between this sutta and Abhidhamma teachings. So that is really something to tune into. Thank you, friends, for your kind attention and for your good practice and for your generosity and good hearts. Let's conclude with 3 heartfelt sadhus to our teacher, the Buddha. Sadhu, 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 anumodami.